Now I can hear you.
Hey,
How you doing, sir? You okay?
I'm doing good. Yeah.
Hey, I'm just admiring your background, whatever all of that is. What is all that?
is that Fire
Well,
on Legion?
yeah, I've always felt that the 501st did more to keep the whole franchise alive than anything George Lucas ever did. And it's my way of honoring them. I've tried to collect every badge from every 501st club in the world.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but I found out how many clubs there actually are, and I'm afraid I'm only halfway there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're like Bon Jovi.
Yeah.
How are you, Tim? Anyway, you well? Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm doing good.
That's amazing.
Wonderful. So essentially, Jamie's going to start off with an introduction, and then we're going to absolutely hammer you with questions.
I'm ready.
Beautiful. That's what we like to hear. Ladies and gents, today we have a very special guest with us who's been involved in so many of my personal favourite projects that I may cry or just completely fanboy during this entire hour. Today's guest has worked on projects like The Dark Crystal, The Labyrinth, Howard the Duck, and a little project you may have heard of called Star Wars. One of the luckiest people on this planet to work with Jim Henson. He is an absolute puppeteering legend, Mr. Timothy Rose.
Oh, thank you very much.
Welcome to Chronicles.
I blush at your introduction.
That's what we like. We like to butter you up and flatter you right at the start.
Absolutely. So, Tim, let's start off with the hard-hitting, obvious question of how the last year was for you.
The last year, I've become the Mad Mountain Hermit, as you can see.
It's all right. It's all good.
It's allowed me to become, because over the time I was doing all these things that you described, I was basically trying to support the family and pay the mortgage and all that sort of thing. And I never really stopped to think about it. I was just too busy doing it. But over the last year and a half, I've had a long time to think about it. And I've come to certain conclusions about it all now.
Like?
Well, I'm trying not to become too bitter and twisted in my old age. So,
I mean,
the film business is it's a passion, not a profession. I'm always amazed that the fans always think that we're all rich and famous. And rich certainly doesn't come into it. I've paid the mortgage, but that's about it.
Wonderful. But I mean, did you teach yourself anything? Did you decide to learn anything new while you were locked away? Like, I don't know, a language or knitting or juggling or something?
Knitting, that's a new one.
I'm afraid I went very fat and lazy and got into box sets and just escaped into a fantasy world and let the real world kind of pass me by.
Perfect.
I joked during the whole thing that I really didn't notice the difference because I live in a small little terrace property in Kent, and it's a Victorian hackney coach driver's house. So it has a pass-through that goes up to the back, and at the back was where he kept his coach and horses. Well, that's where I have my workshops because I'm an animatronics designer as well as a performer. So I build all the stuff up in the workshop. So even with the pandemic, my commute to work is past the raspberries and in the door of the workshop. So my life hasn't really changed all that much at all.
That's good. That's amazing. I love that. So you're building them as well as using them in movies and that sort of thing.
Well, yes, I am. What I've realized over the pandemic time, I was Britain's first animatronic designer.
Really?
Now, the reason I can claim that was because you mentioned The Dark Crystal. It was actually the first film that we did in this country was The Great Muppet Caper. Which we were in pre-production for Dark Crystal, but we were filming The Great Muppet Caper while we were preparing for Dark Crystal. And I was working in the New York shop at that time. Jim was already over here doing the Muppet Show, which was done out at ATV Studios. But he wanted to bring his New York crew over to England to help do the movies. And the Home Office wouldn't let us do it because they said there's too many British people unemployed. There's too many British film technicians. You have to use them. You can't use your guys. So Jim said to his British producer, what am I going to do? I need these guys. They know what they're doing, And so the producer said, well, what you should do is you should give your guys a title that doesn't exist in England, because then you won't be displacing any British workers. So at that point, we came up with the title Animatronics Designer. And we weren't displacing anybody because there were none, not even in America. We made it up. But it worked. They gave us our work permits and we were able to come do the movies. And the rest, as they say, is history. What I've realized over the time was one of the ironies of it was that although I was the first animatronics designer, it was a job or a profession that needed to be given a title. There were always British people here, props guys who were a bit clever with making things move, or special effects guys that didn't have to use a 10-ton ram just to make something move. There were guys that could do it. But when we set it up as its own offshoot of the film genre, it very quickly grew. And during the 80s and 90s, we were kings of the castle. The animatronics guys were the ones in charge of making all the best visual things that you saw in the movies. But it got to the point where, because I was a septic tank, because I was a Yank, I taught all these young Brits guys how to do it. And then I went to it was a movie, Return to Oz. And all the British guys that I had taught how to do animatronics were now working in the workshop. And I was going in there trying to get a job, and I couldn't get a job because they didn't want to hire the foreigner. So that was a funny situation. Actually, you want to hear the funniest bit of all of that?
Yeah, go for it.
I kept walking past all the guys that I taught how to do animatronics up to Norman Reynolds' office to try and beg a job. And he said, Tim, we're having a real problem with these characters, the Wheelers. Have you ever seen the movie Return to Oz? Or?
It's one of my favorite films.
Okay, the Wheelers were the guys that had wheels on the ends of their arms and wheels on their feet instead of feet. So he said, we're having a real problem with how to actually create these characters, how to make them work. He said, if you could come up with a way of doing that, then maybe we could give you a job on the film. So I got real excited and I ran home and I sat down, and in one evening I stayed up all night and I drew out the whole diagram of how to make a Wheeler work and descriptions of why each one of the principles that I was involving in it were necessary, so the guys didn't end up just spread-eagled on the ground when they had wheels on their feet and wheels on their hands. And I took it in the next day and I gave it to Norman. And I said, Norman, whatever you do, please don't show this to John Stevenson, because he was one of the British guys who had been working on this problem, because I don't want anybody to think I'm trying to steal their job. I'm just trying to get a job myself. Because I never, it is a thing in the film business that you can step on toes if you want to, but it's not a way to stay in the business for a long time. Anyway, I waited 2 weeks and I never heard a word. So I went back in one more time and walked past all the guys and said hi and went up. And when I got to Norman's office, he was in a meeting with John Stevenson. So I said, I better not disturb him. I'll wait until their meeting's over. So then I walked past John's office and I saw on his bench in his office a complete set of prototypes based on my drawings for the Wheelers. So having time to kill, I put on the prototypes and started up and down the hallway and went, well, that's not as good as I would have made it myself, but it's all right. And I went shooting past the front open door of Norman Reynolds' office down the end of the hallway, and then rolled past the office again up the other end of the hallway. And I only discovered after I got a job on the movie that John Stevenson was actually, the meeting he was having at the time was to tell Norman that my drawings were a load of BS. They would never work. A human being couldn't do that. And they were going to have to body cast the performers, put them on gurneys, and just pull them through shots with a string. So at that point, I did get a job on the movie.
So unknowingly, you're just wheeling past and going, proving you wrong.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I wasn't doing it to step on anybody's toes. I was just curious to see if my design actually worked or not. You know?
That's amazing.
And it did. They were quite incredible.
They're wonderful. I know so many people that are terrified of the wheelers because of the way they move.
Well, we thought at the time about, was there commercial potential for these things? Because unlike a skateboard or something like that, with these wheelers, you could get up to 25 miles an hour quite easily on them. But then we thought, 25 miles an hour, but your head's sticking out in front, and all it takes is the first kid to hit a telegraph pole or something, and we're sued. And so we never sold wheelers to the public. We just let them watch them in the movies.
I'm amazed no one else tried that.
No.
I've never seen. There you go. But
they're great fun, but they were dangerous. I mean, we taught the guys how to do it and made sure they were as safe as possible while they were doing it. So
it's amazing. So take us back. What was the original plan for young Master Rose? Was it always like puppeteering and engineering, or was it something you just sort of fell into?
Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And we had, it was a local community college by me. I didn't want to waste my parents' money for university education when I didn't really know what I wanted to be educated for. And the brilliant thing about these community colleges were they were quite cheap. And I just went there and I started trying things. I knew I liked drawing. I discovered while I was there, I joined the theater department and discovered I really enjoyed acting as well. I always enjoyed designing things. And while I was at that place, we did Renaissance fairs. And I researched the old fairs in England and found out that quite often Punch and Judy shows would be mentioned in the fairs. So I decided, I'll go see the guys that I used to watch when I was a kid at school, the marionette people, and see if they'll teach me how to make a puppet. So I went and knocked on the door of these old couple who were a mom and pop company that used to do marionette shows for the schools. And I said, this could be a silly thing, but I was wondering if you could teach me how to make a puppet. And instead of telling me to get lost, they invited me inside and took me downstairs to their cellar. And in the cellar, they had marionettes hanging up on the walls that went all the way back to the early 20s, the vaudeville days. And I looked around that wall and I said, you can make all these magical things and they can actually help you to afford this house that you're living in. Teach me how to make a puppet, please.
No.
I don't need to grow up. I can play with dolls my whole life.
That's phenomenal.
At the same time, a basement full of marionette puppets hanging on the wall does sound like the most terrifying thing you'll ever see in your life.
Oh, no. They're beautiful. They're works of art, every single one. Just wonderful things. And I didn't need to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't have to give anything up. With puppetry, I could act, I could direct, I could sculpt, I could build things, I could design things that people had never seen before. So I got to do everything I enjoyed. I've been a very lucky man.
It's incredible. I mean, it's a lot of pressure, I think, when you're younger to decide what you want to do when you grow up, isn't it? 'Cause it's like you have to decide at the age of like 16 or so. It's like you must know now what you want to do. What is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. This? I'll just do this. And then so many people I've spoken to that have gone, I really regret doing that degree. I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't done, not acting, costume design or this because I'm a vet now. Like, it's just like weird. It's so weird how like we have to decide at such a young age what it is we want to do. And then that sets us for the rest of our life.
Well, I've also realized the only bad decision that you can make in your life is to make no decision at all. If you make a decision, it might not be the right one, but it heads you in a direction and down a path that opens up possibilities you didn't know existed before that. So just keep making decisions, go and say, I'll keep going with this or I won't. And then it leads you on to the next thing. So
yes, awesome.
Yeah, just keep making decisions.
Absolutely. Well, look what it's got you. So absolutely incredible. So was Just William the first thing you did on screen? Was that your first role ever, or was there something previous to that?
No, I never did Just William.
It's on your Wikipedia page.
I know, and I have desperately tried to get into IMDb and Wikipedia and correct it because a lot of stuff I did aren't there. And things I haven't done. IMDb says I did Alf in America, which was this big famous puppet, and I never did Alf.
What the hell?
They won't let me in. They won't let me in to correct my own
dinosaurs.
page, or I never found out how to do it.
Oh my day! I'm so sorry. Forgive me.
There's no mention of the dinosaurs on your IMDb page, but I know from your website you worked on that as well.
Yep.
Yes.
I made the baby, and the best one I did was Boss Richfield.
Which is amazing.
That is so cool.
But Boss Richfield was done by Steve Whitmire. And Steve was a hand puppeteer, and most of the dinosaurs were all full body suits. And they weren't just full body suits, they were the heaviest, most killer full body suits anybody ever had to wear. And when we were doing the first screen test, when we got out to California and we were setting up for the show and doing the screen test, I overheard Steve talking to Brian Henson and saying, Brian, this isn't my thing. I'm a hand puppeteer. I can't do one of these big characters because he wasn't that physical. You know, he was one of the world's best puppeteers, but he wasn't a full body suit man. He didn't have the physique for it. And I ran over to him and I said, Steve, before you say no to this job, I've done something a bit special with the boss that none of the other characters have. And the Boss Richfield, I found out that he was only ever seen in his trailer sitting at his desk. So that meant you didn't have to wear Boss Richfield. I built a whole cantilevered thing. His spine went down and pivoted off the chair of the desk. And then I used bungee cords to support the weight of the whole thing. So instead of holding the puppet up, you actually had to pull the puppet down to bring him into shot and operate him. So he took no effort at all. He was basically, the entire thing was neutrally balanced. So I said, Steve, before you say you can't do the job, just give it one try, get in there and have a go. And he got inside this thing within minutes. You could hear him in there. You know, the boss is moving around. Oh, I'm in all this sort of thing. And you could hear Steve inside going, oh man. Oh, this is so good. Oh. And then, of course, he went on to do the most fabulous job with the character. Because he wasn't holding up anything. He was holding him up.
That's amazing. That's so clever that all the detail must go into it to making them and, you know, to have the pulley system. Like, it's just, it blows my tiny little mind, Tim.
So obviously you said that couple taught you how to make the puppets and stuff like that. Did you go anywhere after to like develop your skills and learn the extra, or did they literally teach you everything you know?
It was a combination of what they taught me. The reason I got the job with the Muppets was also because of my father. He was a maintenance man at a Methodist church camp, but his hobby was doing radio-controlled model airplanes. Mm-hmm. And of course, when I went to work for the Muppets, they were just developing animatronics, and a lot of it involved using the servos from radio-controlled model airplanes. So unlike the other people, I already knew how to plug in servos, and I already knew how to operate transmitters, and I already knew. And it was all because of what I'd learned from my dad. You know, he could make anything he thought of, and he taught me how to do that as well. So
that is so cool. Cheers, Dad. Thanks very much. I'm already in.
Yeah, no, and at the time I was just playing on the workshop floor of his workshop, you know, so.
How is it you had got to work with Jim Henson and stuff on the Muppets? Was it a case of there was a job and you applied, or did you just rock up there going, hey, I'll learn how to do this?
As you said, with where did I learn the puppetry? Yes, they taught me how to do the Punch and Judy, but I did such a bad job of making them that the puppets were so heavy that halfway through my performance, my finger would go dead and the puppet's head would fall over because it weighed so much I couldn't hold it up, you know. So they were terrible. I still have them in the loft, but I just as a anecdotal thing, because they were terrible puppets. But then I built better puppets, and I did the true story of Prince George and the Dragon. And I performed it. It was a bag puppet booth that I could wear on my shoulders. And I went all through the Northeast of America, did shopping malls, fairs, everything. I just stood in front of the people and did puppet shows and learned what worked and what didn't work. And one young guy saw my puppet performance. I'm convinced of it because I met him at Henson's many, many years later, because he was the one that did... can't remember the name of the movie. It was Sean Connery as the voice of the dragon. And a young guy...
Dragonheart? No?
Dragonheart, that's it.
It was Dragon, yeah.
Yeah, because the director originally came to us because we were going to do the dragon animatronically.
Okay.
They ended up doing him CG because the one the Hensons made wasn't that good, unfortunately, but that's a whole nother story. But basically the whole story of the dragon and George working together, as opposed to George saving the world from the dragon, was all the basis of my original puppet show.
No way.
And the director had been a kid in New England when I was doing all those fairs and everything. Now, he never admitted that he saw my show.
But yeah, it sounds like he did.
But I suspect maybe he did.
So
anyway, so I was doing those shows in New England, and I had to take a cut in pay. I would get paid to show up, but I wouldn't charge much money because then they would give me a job. But they would always allow me to put out my hat so the people watching the show could then throw money in the hat. So I was busking. And I had to take a cut in pay when I went to work for Muppets because I was making more money with people throwing money in my hat than Jim was paying me to work for the Muppets when I went to work for Muppets. But the reason I went to work for Muppets was, okay, I know how to do puppets now. Now I want to know, how do you become a millionaire doing puppets? So I went to work for Jim Henson at that point.
And
funny enough,
the surname Henson.
I originally tried to get a job there. I wrote out my whole CV and I got on a train and I went for 3 hours to New York City, and I was very shy. The other reason I liked puppets was because I didn't like being the front man. I didn't like being in front of people myself. So I was so shy that I got outside the Muppets workshops in New York, and I put on my puppet booth and I walked into reception, and my puppet gave them my CV. Well, I never heard from them again. They said, crazy man here, crazy man, we don't want him.
Oh, that would have charmed the hell out of me.
I think it was 2 years after that, 1 year after that, I was now working and living in New York City doing theater lighting for Broadway and off-Broadway shows. And I heard that the Muppets needed help in the workshop. And that's when I met Fals Fazakis, and we started working together to do animatronics. So I got a job the second time I tried, but not the first.
because you were on the Muppets Christmas Carol, weren't you?
I was indeed.
Oh, what a movie that is. I watched it recently again. Not obviously recently because it's the summer, but I mean, like the Christmas just gone. It's just chef's kiss. It's a spectacular film.
People come to me and at conventions and say, Muppets Christmas Carol, we put it on every year when we're decorating the Christmas tree because it helps us just get the whole spirit of Christmas. And it's like, yeah, we made a good one. That's good. But I loved Statler and Waldorf. Their heads just got sold for $95,000.
Whoa!
Now, don't tell the people who spend all that money, but they're made out of foam latex and then flocked on the surface. And foam latex has a lifespan, man. It don't last, All that money they spent, they're just going to turn to dust in front of their eyes. But anyway, the thing I love, it was an inside joke. Well, it was an inside homage, really, more not a joke as such. But originally on the Muppet Show, Statler and Waldorf were played by Jim Henson and lockdown brain. Hunt. I forget his first name. Mr. Hunt. Anyway, they were both dead by the time we were doing Muppets Christmas Carol. So the ghosts of the Marley Brothers were being played by the ghosts of the Muppets. The two guys who weren't with us anymore were now the ghosts on Muppets Christmas Carol.
That's really clever.
That is so clever. So it took my brain a second then. I think we both just
same.
went,
I was like, hmm?
Oh,
Richard Hunt. I knew if I talk about something else, Richard Hunt and Jim Henson.
That's
they
clever.
were both dead at the time that we did that. So
that's such a shame, but such a clever and cool way to pay homage to them. Absolutely wonderful.
So one of my favorite stories of Christmas Carol. On the Muppet Show, the main guys would do 4 different characters, and they would just write all the scripts so none of the 4 characters would appear at the same time. But when we started doing the movies, you would get several characters being in the same scene. So what happened then was that in this particular instance, Frank Oz did Miss Piggy, he did Fozzie Bear, he did Animal, he did Sam Eagle, and one other. But so in Fozziewig's Christmas party that he was doing, Frank was now doing Miss Piggy. So I got to puppeteer Fozzie Bear. So I was extremely nervous. It's like, because Frank is the biggest stickler. He's the biggest perfectionist one has ever seen. I watched Frank do 128 takes of a scene for Great Muppet Caper before we got the one that he would allow to be used in the film. Anyway, so he's doing Miss Piggy, I'm doing Fozzie Bear, and I'm trying to do my best job to do what I think Frank would do in the situation and hope that he would be pleased. Well, we did the first take, and he came up to me, he said, Tim, man, too much, just back it off. I said, oh, sorry, Frank, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, okay, of course I will. So we did the next take, and at the end of the take, he came back, and same thing again, Tim, too much, just back it off. And after 4 or 5 times of this, I got so frustrated because he wasn't telling me what I was doing wrong or what I could do differently. He just kept telling me not to do so much. So I got so frustrated, I said, I'm going to ruin the next take. And when we did the take, everybody was moving in the scene, but Fozzie Bear was totally rigid, not moving anything, like he was stuck on a stick. And at the end of that take, Frank came up to me, he said, Tim, that was perfect. That was just what I wanted from you.
I knew it.
And I mean, he was vicious. He had a wicked sense of humor, that man. He wanted to do it all. He didn't want anybody else to do any of his stuff, basically.
So interesting you say that, because we spoke to a puppeteer a couple of weeks ago, Noel McNeil, and I was saying to him, because like he's filled in to do Big Bird and stuff in the past, and I was saying, like, is there that pressure there when you're performing a role that another puppeteer is known, because obviously you don't see their face, but they know it's their movements, it's their, mannerisms and stuff like that. And it's nice to know that pressure is there, because, someone can't see you, but that person who operates it normally will know if you do something different.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have the hardest time with the new Muppets because I worked with all the original guys. And for some reason, producers always think that because it's a puppet, you can put anybody in there and it'll still be the same puppet. And it's not. Something as simple as Kermit the Frog, which is 2 ping pong balls and a green bit of lure. When Jim Henson wasn't there anymore, he wasn't Kermit. And Steve Whitmire, who is without doubt one of the best puppeteers in the world, which he proved in Muppet's Christmas Carol by doing Rizzo Rat. Now, Rizzo Rat is a little round ball of fur for a body, a little head on a stick on the top that can't even look up and down. It only turns left and right, and only the lower jaw opens. And when Steve Whitmire is doing Rizzo the Rat, he's good enough to be one of the MCs for the show with Gonzo all the way through that movie, and you just keep waiting for the next time they show up. Now, for a puppet that simple to hold an audience that well, that puppeteer has to be good. But Steve was the one who got the totally unenviable job of keeping Kermit alive after Jim died. And he did a good job of it, but if Jim had been alive, Kermit would have evolved over that next 20 years. Steve had to keep doing Kermit the way Jim had done Kermit 20 years ago. And I kept wanting to say, come on, Steve, he's your puppet now. He's not Jim's anymore. Go in there, and get it. And it was only finally, we were doing Muppets Most Wanted, I think, one of the newer ones. And Steve was doing this scene with Fay Ray where he's trying to escape out of the gulag. And he got so into the scene that he was doing his scene. And I was like, yeah, Steve, that's what I've been waiting for you to do your Kermit, not Jim's Kermit. And he was doing it just because he was so involved in that scene. But then afterwards, he'd go straight back to doing the Kermit he thought should be done. So.
Yeah, it's fair. Like I said, it's not an enviable job to take.
No. And then look what they've done to him in the end anyway. I don't know if you know the story about that.
What is it? Yeah.
The mouse got rid of Steve. Somebody else does Kermit now.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Because he was arguing that they were trying to make Kermit do something that Jim would not approve of. And in his effort to stand up for what he had been doing for 20 years, which was trying to let people see what Jim would have done, he was dumped. No other way to say it. So. And we can't talk about it because of non-disclosure agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want the mouse on us. No one wants the mouse on us.
We don't. I am too old. I can't have the mouse take my house.
The mouse is not getting my cheese. Anyway, so of all the puppets in your career, there's one I saw that has got to be the most intricate and detailed, and that is Shenshot the Treasurer from Dark Crystal. How was it to perform that, and was the pressure on, because that was a big project and it was your first? Was it your first movie that you did? Performance-wise, sorry.
No, because we'd done Great Muppet Caper before that.
Of course, yes, sorry, but it was a big deal. The Dark Crystal was
for me. That was my biggest starring role, most important character that I'd done in a movie up to that point. Yeah,
because that puppet is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
The detail on it and stuff like it is. I haven't seen that film in a very long time, don't get me wrong, but I was looking at pictures during my research, and it is an absolute stunning puppet.
Oh, the detail! It deserved high def resolution, which we didn't have in those days. The detail on those characters was phenomenal and kept on going. We had Jim made us pewter, because our hands, they were beautiful articulated arm extensions, but they still couldn't really hold knives and forks and stuff. So what Jim did was he had pewter finger tools made. We had little forks that went on one of the fingers, and little spoons and knives and everything. So we could just use our 2 fingers to eat when we were eating at the table and everything. But
That's amazing.
the props were made out of solid pewter by an artist that did that for a living. You know, it just all the way through, the things that were done for that movie were just phenomenal.
That's amazing. Did you get to work on the new one they made?
Sore subject, move on.
Okay, my bad. Apologies.
No, I mean, I was sitting here going, I'm not dead yet, guys. If you'd like some help here, you know, I sort of do know how these things work, but I wasn't asked. And to be honest with you, I haven't seen any of the new ones because I never paid for Netflix, but I didn't really want to revisit it. I had such a fabulous time then.
Yeah, I know what you mean. You'd find yourself comparing and whatnot, wouldn't you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I've done another performance that I got to revisit, and it sort of lived up to my expectations of I wish they would have just left it alone with what I'd done originally. So
yeah. There are 4.
I hear people really like the new Dark Crystal, so I'm not putting it down in any way. I just wasn't involved in it.
To be honest, I haven't watched it either. So.
It's a shame. How dare you?
No. So there are 4 projects of yours in particular I wanted to talk about, if that's okay, just because they mean the absolute world to me. They're some of my favourite things in the entire world, and I've got you here, and
I'm happy I've been able to touch your life in this way.
You really have, my friend. You really have. I was getting quite emotional doing my research. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, goodness me!
But I just any like memories, any talking points, any of what you did on these roles, just a bit of insight, really. So
you have to give me a clue.
First off, the Labyrinth.
Yes.
You know, that movie is so special to me. I have a connection with my best friend over that movie. Just like it means the goddamn world to me. Now, I believe I read that you designed the knockers. Is that right?
That was Jim's little joke.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I made the knockers. That my film credit, out of all the things I actually did on the movie, that was the credit that Jim gave me on it. Tim Rose, the knockers, because I was a young man who had rather a big interest in the opposite sex in those days, and my reputation preceded me. I always said in Muppets that if I had had half as much fun as my reputation, I'd be a very happy man. So that was Jim's idea of a joke, to say Tim Rose the knockers because of the other meanings of knockers and that. I also designed Alf, Ralph, Jim, and Tim, which Jim was very impressed with. That animatronically, I don't know if you guys want to get into technical side of things, but animatronically in those days, we designed eye blinks, we designed universal eyes and all that. But the problem was that when you started moving the eyes around universally, up and down as well as left and right, that the eyes would very quickly disappear into the eyelids or down into the cheeks and make the character look stupid. So what I did with Alf, Ralph, Jim, and Tim was I built what I called a floating eye cradle, so that when you had the eyes look up, the eyelids floated with them. The entire mechanism moved. So it made the foam move around in the face. And Jim was just totally blown away by it. He brought the camera in and we did like a strip shot. There was basically just Alf's eyes. And no matter how close you got with him, they never lost their life. You know, he just was, this is fantastic. We want more of this, you know, kind of thing. But I also, one of the things I was asked to do was design a universal mechanism that could go into any one of the goblins. And I said, well, that's impossible. There's too many different parameters. And then I started working on the problem. And I said, well, if we can't have one mechanism, but if we can limit the sculptors to one of 4 eye sizes, and you really only need, for up to that point, every sculptor was just going into a drawer and picking out whatever eye size he wanted for his character. And then you had to start from scratch every time and build a mechanism for that size eye.
Yeah.
So I said, if you can limit it to one of 4 eye size, big eyes, less big eyes, littler eyes, and tiny eyes, then we could build a load of mechano parts, Lego bits, that you could just go into the drawers and pull them all out and punch them together. So this thing I ended up designing, we ended up being able to knock out another goblin completely operating mechanically in under a week, where it used to take like 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
But then I decided I've got to tear up all these drawings because I've just put myself as a designer out of work. They can bring in anybody, let them go to the bins, and they're suddenly we're all amazing animatronics designers now. So I put myself out of work in my very process of just trying to solve this one particular problem. So basically, all the goblins blink because of my eye Mickeys.
That is so cool.
And there's a ton of goblins in that film.
Yeah. Now, the funny thing about that was with those ton of goblins, they all took 2 performers. The one to hold the puppet up and most of them were rotted arms or live arms. And the other one just to operate the face, operate the eyes and the eye blinks. So I thought, well, this is crazy, 2 people for 1 puppet. So I called up my dad and I said, Dad, you know the radio control and the servos. Is there a way to make the transmitter just talk directly to the servo without having RF radio frequency, And so he sat down and he came up with a little like mini transmitter for me and sent it over to me and said, yeah, just connect your pots to that. So I built this control that was basically fit on the arm rod of the character. And if you took your finger and pointed it, the eyes would look where you pointed. And if you blinked your thumb, it would make them blink. And if you pushed your thumb back, it would make the eyes open really wide. So I was really proud of this because we just saved half the budget on the goblins because 1 performer could now do the whole goblin on their own. Well, I took it in the gym and I showed it to him and he tried it out and he said, oh, no, this is too difficult. It's far too much for 1 performer to do. So I said, Frank, you give it a try, man. This is really good because I could do it. I couldn't understand why they couldn't, And Frank tried it and he said, oh, no, Jim's right. This is far too much. We'll just stick with things the way they are. But one of the British guys, he saw what I had done. And at the end of the movie, when we were all laid off, he got put on as an R&D guy. And by the end of it all, they had invented the tower system, which not only made the eyes look left, right, and up and down, but also could control the cheeks, control the eyebrows, all through a computer system. So the whole way that animatronics then evolved after that was rejected by Frank Oz and Jim Henson as being more than 1 performer could handle. I've never told anybody that, so that's a secret. You're not allowed to know that. So.
Oh, well, this is going to be out soon, so everyone's going to know.
And if you don't believe me, I have that control up in my workshop. I've saved it.
Amazing.
Amazing. So you also worked on, let's be honest, it's the first Marvel Hollywood movie, and that's Howard the Duck. I've only ever heard nightmares about this suit. How was it? What did you do on Howard the Duck?
Well, how long have we got? Because it's a really good story, actually.
We don't have time limits. You go.
Plenty of time.
Oh, okay. Well, I was working on Greystoke, Lord of the Apes. And it was Rick Baker was in charge of that, doing all the animatronics for it. And over the course of that, we used to give Rick's wife, Elaine, a ride home every night because Rick would work so late that we would take her back to Hempstead while he stayed working. And one night on the trip home, I said something to Elaine, which she took back to work and said to Rick. And the next morning when I came to work, Rick came out of his office and confronted me and told me that I was fired off the movie.
What?
Okay.
So down the road, I've done other things. I now get contacted. Elaine Baker, who'd now left Rick, was working with this other guy at ILM, and she had been put in charge of making the duck for Howard the Duck. Now, these guys have been working on this for 7 months, and they didn't have a duck that worked. So George came in, Mr. Lucas came in, and he went to Phil Tippett, and he said, Phil, what can we do about this, man? I mean, we're supposed to be turning over here in a month or so, and we don't have a duck to film on, and he's the star of the show, effectively. So Phil said, well, you need somebody like that guy that we had on Return of the Jedi there, you know, the one that sorted out Ackbar for us. And he said, who's that? Well, Tim Rose. Well, where's Tim Rose? Well, he's in England. Well, get him over here. So I got contacted in England. Did I want to come work on Howard the Duck? And they sent me 10 Howard the Duck comic books because I didn't know who Howard the Duck was. So they sent me these 10 comic books, and I read the comic books. And by the time I got through with them, I was in love with this character. Yes, I wanted to do this movie. So they brought over myself, and I brought a Polish guy, Tad Shanowski, who had worked with us since Great Muppet Caper right on through, who was the most brilliant animatronics designer. I got to hold my hands up. He was far better than mine. I said, Tad, why are you so good at animatronics? He says, oh, you must understand. In my country, if you wanted a car, you went out to the field and you dug up the scrap from the Second World War and you welded it together and you made a car, because that was the only way my family was ever going to have a car. So he, like me, had just grown up on the workshop floor in his dad's workshop putting things together, and that's why he was so damn good at putting things together. So I took Tad with me. We got out there and looked at their duck, and I said, I can see why you wanted us to come. And we now had 1 month before they started filming to sort out the problems on the duck. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, I mean, if the star of the show was Sean Connery, would you set the start date on a movie before you had him signed, sealed, and delivered in a airtight contract? But because it was a puppet, this whole juggernaut just trundled on with the assumption that the puppet was going to show up on the first day of shooting. And me and Tad were the ones who had to sort it all out. Oh, but the best bit was 5 days after we got there, they watched us and watched what we were doing, and what we managed to achieve in 5 days convinced them that they no longer needed Elaine Baker on the production. So they fired her.
What?
Now, Elaine was convinced that because she got me fired off of Greystoke, that I got her fired to get her back. And as I said with John Stevenson, never in my professional career have I ever done anything against anybody, no matter how badly they treated me in the past. I just haven't done it. It's not part of my being. I grew up on a Methodist church camp. What can I say? I was taught a different way, you know. So with 1 month to go, I've now got 30 people working for me, well, 29, and Tad, who was definitely working with me, who all thought that their boss had been fired because I got her fired. So to say the emotional stress of the situation. I'm here trying to help them, and not one of them wanted to help me because I was the BS that got her fired, you know. So it was fun. We got the puppet made. I desperately tried in that month to bring the duck back closer to the comic book character, because I argued with the director that his core audience were the fans of the comic. And if they loved him, then they were going to sell it to all their friends and you were going to have a successful movie. He thought a comic book character in a live film with real actors would never work, so it had to be more humanoid. So I had built an entirely different duck under the guise of just, well, we need more foam here, we need bits there to make it have more movement. But also, I was trying to secretly take the duck back to the comic book character. When I showed Willard my character, he said, I don't care if mine doesn't move as well as long as it looks like my duck. So he rejected the one that had twice as much movement in the face and looked more like the comic book character just because he was so in love with his duck.
Oh my
Wow.
days.
What an ego on that man.
Oh, it didn't stop there. Yes. I love the fact that it's become a cult classic. I was in Sweden and the promoter at the convention came over. He said, "There are Howard the Duck pictures." And I said, "Why? Nobody remembers that movie." He said, "Oh, are you joking? In Sweden, it was bigger than Star Wars." For some
Really?
reason, the Swedes just loved Howard the Duck. Yeah.
I do love that film, though, to be honest.
Wow.
Why? I do too. It's the one I'm the proudest of because I'm an animatronics designer.
Mm.
And you can argue about a lot of things. I didn't like the look of the duck. I'll say it for whoever wants to hear it. But our animatronics stayed alive in every edit, in every shot, all the way through the film. And we kept that duck alive on screen the whole time. And there was no CG in those days. So I can tell you, it was not an easy thing to do. It took a lot of hard work.
So when that duck's feathers rose on its head during that sex scene, they really drew on his head.
You know how long it took to work out a stupid little thing like those hackles raising up, how long that took to actually get to work and be able to repeat for take 2 and take 3 and take 5. Yeah.
But it is one of the greatest erection jokes in cinema history, so it was fine.
Yeah, but there was no actual sex in any of those scenes. It was all.
No. That would be very, very disturbing.
We just did a Howard the Duck Zoom convention, and Ed Gale was talking about that because he couldn't really see out of the head. And when Beverly was coming onto him in that scene, he reminded me, because I'd forgotten the little particular bit, but he couldn't see. And she had started to pull her top off, and he was supposed to say, "No, Beverly, don't do it." But he put his hands up, and because he couldn't see, he actually got too close and got more of a handful than he intended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, he couldn't see, Tim. He couldn't see at all.
Well, these little guys, I tell you, you gotta watch out for them.
I've learned off knockers over there. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And
No, it was great. It was a great movie. I'm very proud of what we achieved on Howard the Duck.
I love that film. And obviously, we spoke about it briefly earlier, but Return to Oz, playing a character that we all need in our lives, and that's TikTok. I
was supposed to be the Cowardly Lion.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
What happened there?
Oh, I'm glad I didn't get the job.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't do a lot in that one, though, does he, the Cowardly Lion?
Not a lot, no. But I was life cast for it. So the lion was built on my body. But I'm glad I didn't get it, because in the end scene, the final triumphal scene, Dorothy rides in on the back of the lion.
Yes.
Well, she actually rides in front of the legs, which are the arms of the performer. So her entire weight is sitting on the neck of the performer
Ooh.
while he's holding up the whole weight of the lion's head as well. That's why I say I'm glad I didn't do the Cowardly Lion in the end. So.
I can imagine.
Oh my days.
Ooh.
Yeah, I ended up. I designed the puppet version of Jack Pumpkinhead, the Wheelers, as we said. But my main focus was I got put in charge of TikTok, and I was working on TikTok, the original prototype that we made, and we had a screen test in front of Willard. So we took TikTok in to do the screen test, and there was a whole list of requirements that Willard wanted for this character to do, and I had only achieved about 50% of those requirements. But I'd worked with Muppets, and in a performance, if a character doesn't do everything it's supposed to, then you razzle dazzle them and you make them look the other direction instead of where the bits aren't working, you know. So I went in, we did the screen test, and I did a razzle dazzle performance. But what shocked me was that my boss, who was in charge of the workshop, Lyle Conway, his name was, he was in charge of the workshop. I did such a good razzle dazzle job that I razzle dazzled him too. And as soon as we came off set, I ran back to the workshop and I tore this thing apart because I thought, you know, I need more time. If I would just rebuild it, I know what I've done wrong now. I can make a better one, you know. And he came in and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm rebuilding TikTok because you could see he wasn't doing everything." They loved it. "You just don't want to do anything else. That's why you're rebuilding this. You're just trying to pad out your job." Now, by complete coincidence, my girlfriend, who was later become my wife, was the secretary of the producer. And when I was talking to her at home going, "Oh my God, you know, my boss won't let me make TikTok properly. What am I going to do? I don't know what to do." And she went in and told the producer, and the producer took me out of that workshop and set me up in my own workshop. And I was allowed to choose my own crew because that character was so important to the movie that we needed one that did everything the director needed it to do.
Amazing.
So he overrode my boss. And that one time I didn't get fired. I actually got my own crew. we got to make TikTok the way he should be.
That's incredible. Did you do the voice for TikTok as well? Or was it just...
No.
You did.
I did the whole performance for TikTok, and when I do the performances, I always do the guide tracks. I am the man who's always been over voiced. You've never heard my voice ever on a single thing that I have done. And the great irony of that was that when the editors were doing the voice and they were over voicing TikTok, all the editors were saying, "Leave Tim's voice on there. He did TikTok better than this guy's doing." Because they edit the whole film with my voice. So they, you know, the voice becomes TikTok. That's what they hear and that's what they want. And then when they just have the scenes they need the voice for, that's when they overvoice and get rid of me.
So I was
Happened on Howard the Duck too. I was only doing a guide track for the voice. I was never meant to be doing the voice. And because I was only doing a guide track, I tried out different voices because I thought if I was actually doing Howard, what voice would I do? And I finally found one I really liked. And then I sort of stuck with that. But when they edited the movie together, my voice was all over the shop because there was one version there and there was another version there in different sections of the edit. And the reason I was doing that was because I was told right from this word go that Robin Williams was doing the voice for Howard the Duck. Did you know that?
No.
Nope.
Okay. So while we were doing the scene that you guys loved so much earlier, Beverly in the loft with hackles raising, Robin, I'm sitting off the set with the radio controlled and looking at the monitor, operating the face. And Robin Williams comes around the corner. And I get introduced to him, and I said, well, Mr. Williams, sit down and have a go at the puppet controls, because if you can puppeteer as well, I can go back to England and marry my pregnant fiance. So he sits down at the controls. The sound guy sees that it's Robin Williams now at the controls, so he cranks the volume up on the microphone because he says, Robin Williams, he's going to say something funny. We need to hear this. But he starts doing a voice for the duck that sounded just like my voice for the duck. And Willard out on set, the director, screams out, are you able to edit language off of this thing? Or am I allowed to say what he really said?
You can say whatever you like. Say whatever you like.
Can I say what he really said?
Yeah, go for it.
Go for it.
Okay. So the director screams out on set, Rose, you fucking asshole. How many times have I told you not to talk on that microphone when I'm out here directing? And the first AD runs over to him. He says, that's not Tim Rose. That's Robin Williams. And quick as that, he goes, Robin, love what you're doing. So Robin Williams turns to me and he goes, is this the way things are around here? And I said, well, I got to be honest with you. He's in a pretty good mood today. It could get a lot worse. And he said, thank you very much. That's been very educational. And he walked away and he kept walking and he never did the movie. Now,
oh, wow.
Fast forward 15 years. I'm doing a Saturday morning kids program, What's Up, Doc? And I'm doing a Baljet, a little ball of fluff puppet on a kids program. And I get sent up to London to interview Robin Williams for Mrs. Doubtfire.
Okay.
And the pressure's on. You got 15 minutes to do your interview. If you don't get what you need, the tape comes out and you get off because we've got other ones to do. So you get it done, So, oh my God, I've got 15 minutes to get everything they want me to get back at the studio. So I walk in the room and I go, Mr. Williams, I know you don't remember me, but, and I only got that far. He looked me straight in the eye and said, Rose, you fucking asshole. And I said, I always wondered if that had something to do with you not doing the movie. And he said, oh, you better believe it. Life's too short to work for assholes like that.
Oh, man, what a hero.
I worked for that particular one for 9 months, but I didn't have the kudos of Robin Williams, so I had to. So at that point, as you say, what a hero. And he was in many ways. I was always a huge fan of Robin Williams. So this whole script I was meant to be doing about Mrs. Doubtfire, I threw out the window. And my puppet character looked up at him and said, I've only got one question. And he goes, yes, what's that? And I said, oh, Captain, my Captain, I've only got one thing I'd like to ask you. Could you say, good morning, Vietnam, just once? And he looks over at the sound guys and he says, sound guys ready? And the sound guys are, because we all wanted to be in the room while he was saying it. We all wanted to be there at the time. And he just rolled back and let out all the pressure of doing Mrs. Doubtfire interviews back to back 15 minutes for 10 solid hours with the best Good Morning Vietnam I ever heard in my life.
That's amazing.
So I took the video back, thought I was going to get fired, but they decided on that particular occasion I caught something very special on video. So
that is beautiful. What a moment to be a part of as well.
Yeah.
Oh.
See, that was less than 3 minutes of that man's life, 15 years previously, and he remembered it all.
Incredible.
Now, to have the sort of brain that can remember all that, I think all of us, we survive our lives by our ability to forget.
Yeah.
And I think what made Robin Williams such a genius was he never actually forgot anything, but it's also made him less happy maybe than he could have been as well. That's my own personal theory, having met him. So, right, carry on. Next question, please.
Just one quick question I did want to ask about TikTok. When I was doing my research on it, did I see it was a contortionist bent over in the suit to do the legs?
No, he was a gymnast. He had
Sorry, not a contortionist, a gymnast.
he was a gymnast who had just missed going to the Olympics as a trampoline something or other. Michael Sundin. He's no longer with us.
It's a shame.
He was actually at the time or shortly after that, he became a Blue Peter presenter as well. But then he showed up at Heavens one evening and did a little performance there that got out, and he lost his job on Blue Peter, I can tell you. Yeah, no, he was bent over double with his arms crossed to operate the arms, and had to look at the video monitor that was strapped to his backside. And the funny thing was that when we tried to get him to walk because of these big round feet, he kept tripping and falling over. And then we suddenly realized that when he was trying to go back to where he started from, he didn't trip. So basically, the performer doing TikTok ended up walking backwards everywhere TikTok went. Because when he kicked his heels up, he could lift up the feet and not trip.
That's
so
incredible.
The scene where we're coming out of the Gump sofa construction area and down into the Hall of Mirrors, he is coming down those stairs backwards, totally blind, working on a monitor. And I can tell you, we had as many people as we could, either side of that camera, as close as we could, because if he tripped coming down those stairs, we were going to try our damnedest to save him before he broke his neck in that costume, because it was, I'm glad we got that scene shot and he was alive to tell the tale at the end of it, because like I said, a lot of the stuff we did in those days wasn't easy to do. Health and safety wouldn't allow you to even try to do it now, but we did it because it made magic for movies.
Just imagine everyone at the side being like, shit, all the way down.
Yeah, so TikTok was 3 people. It was Mike in the suit, myself operating the face, and another guy who assisted me with some of the radio control movements. So.
That's amazing.
It's just sensational.
So I think it's kind of obvious what the fourth one I wanted to talk to you about really was. It goes without saying, Star Wars. You know, I think.
I'm sorry, I've been talking to you guys for a long time now.
So we're going to go now. Bye. How did you get involved in Star Wars then? Because it's just who you and what you. Yeah, just I'm not going to get started because I won't shut up. So,
well, at the time I was trying to get a job on. I've forgotten what the name of it was. Muppet production we shot in Canada. Had the Doozoos in it and had the Fraggle Rock. That was it.
Fraggle Rock, yes.
I went to Jim and said, Jim, I know I do all this wonderful animatronic stuff, but the puppeteers get paid a lot more. Could I be a puppeteer on Fraggle Rock? And he said, well, Tim, your real value to the company is the animatronic work that you do. And being a stupid young man, I thought that what he was saying was that I don't think you're good enough puppeteer. But what he was really saying was it's not that hard to find a puppeteer. What was really hard was to find somebody that could design the animatronic stuff that I was coming up with at the time. So he wanted me to stay working there. He didn't want me to do it enough that he'd pay me what a puppeteer was getting paid, but he still wanted me to do it, you know. So I got angry because I thought I'm being pigeonholed. I'm going to get stuck in a workshop, and I love performing as much as what I love is designing, building, and then getting to perform what I have built, because that is the ultimate performance. That is the whole picture, you know. Anyway, I thought he was telling me I wasn't good enough to puppeteer, so I quit. I then went back to my apartment in New York City, and I'm sitting there going, all you've ever wanted to do is puppets, and you just left the biggest puppet company in the world. How stupid are you? You know, so got the whips out, and I'm flagellating myself in my apartment. And the phone rings. My friend Mike McCormick, that I'd worked on Dark Crystal and Great Muppet Caper and Labyrinth, all these things, he calls me up and he said, Tim, I've had a terrible thing happen. I was trying to operate this character. He'd built a marionette version of Cy Snoodles, a nightclub singer, for Jabba's Palace. But he'd made her as a classic marionette. And he was up on the scaffolding trying to operate her. And she weighed in at about 60 pounds. And he lost his balance, fell off the scaffolding, and broke his arm. So he could no longer build anything because he only had one arm. He couldn't puppeteer because he only had one arm. So he said, I've recommended you to replace me. If you can get out here, maybe you got a job. So I flew myself out to California, even though I had no money. I said, please, guys, give me a job because I don't have any job at all. And I'm, like that. And fortunately, Phil Tippett liked me, and he did give me a job. So I took over the puppeteering for Salacious Crumb. I knew I was going to be doing that. And I decided that I didn't want to break my arm. So I redesigned Cy Snoodles, and I made her what I called a reverse string marionette. So instead of being operated from over the top, she was held up on bungee cords, so all her weight was suspended. And then, like Boss Richfield, I pulled her to the floor and operated her that way. While we were doing that, I saw this other big red character, and I said, this other one that we're working on over here, who's that? And Phil Tippett said, oh, that's another background character that appears later in the movie. I said, does he appear in any of the same scenes as Cy Snoodles and Salacious Crumb? And he said, no, he doesn't. I said, well, can I puppeteer him as well? And he said, yeah, sure you can. That was Admiral Ackbar, by the way. So I had been fired off of Greystoke. And one of the reasons I got fired off of Greystoke was because I was trying to talk Steve Johnson, who went on to do Ghostbusters and all that sort of business. I was trying to talk him into making the close-up version of the head gorilla into a puppet. And they said that was totally ridiculous. The California guys, for their close-ups, they would take the head and they would mount it on a tabletop and then stick 80 cables in there and get the face moving. But the face would only move for strip shots because the head couldn't move anywhere. It was on a tabletop. But Phil Tippett, when I picked up the Ackbar character, and I said, Phil, I know this could work. I know this could work. Instead of mounting it on the tabletop, just let me wear it. Let me put it on like a puppet and move it around. And I just took the foam head and I did a little performance for him in the workshop. And he went, yeah, that looks good. And you got to understand, I was really nervous about this because this same suggestion got me fired off a movie already.
Yeah.
But I took the chance once again. And I said, well, let me make him, a puppet. Yeah, we got the establishing full body suit to walk around, but let me make him into a puppet because we could do more with it. We could make him come alive better. And Phil said, yes, run with it. And I'm very grateful to him because I was able to prove that I was right.
So when you were asked to play Ackbar, you didn't realize how big of a role he actually had in the movie then?
Oh, no, he was another background character that appeared later on.
That's amazing. So really, you kind of looked your way into that role then. Just like, let me try this out. Okay, go on.
Yes, I say at the conventions, I would like to say that I auditioned against thousands of people and I was just so much better that I got the part. But the truth was, he was sitting on a bench over there. I said I could do it. Phil said yes, and that was it. I got the job. So
that's amazing. Now, when it comes to Salacious Crumb,
yeah,
I know you said you didn't really do the voices. Did you do the laugh?
I certainly did.
That's amazing. How did you come up with that laugh? Because that is the most iconic thing.
Well, George used to come around the workshop at the end of the day. We were still working at 10 o'clock at night, but their jobs were finished. So he'd come in and hang out with us because he liked us guys and he liked looking to see what we were making for him, And he picked up that character and he said, the name for this character is Salacious Crumb. I was like, okay. I said, and what do you want me to do with him in the movie? He said, well, I want you to puppeteer him. You're a puppeteer, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. Yes, of course I am. I can do that, But I didn't have a clue. There's nothing in the script. It was just a thing that sat in front of Jabba. So I looked up in the dictionary what salacious actually meant because I didn't know, I couldn't remember. And it said something sort of like someone who gets enjoyment from the misfortunes of others. So I said, okay, salacious by name, salacious by nature. And at that point, I made him into the cheerleader for the Rancor Pit Monster. And we fed a lot more people to the Rancor Pit Monster than you get to see in the final edit, but So every time one of them went down there and the bones started crunching, it was like, yeah, eat him again. Like that. So I just had turned him into this crazy, maniacal, really quite nasty, evil little shit. But, but of course, when you're in the costume, you're under the set, you're dressed up like that. So they can't use my voice. I'm living in England. They're editing in California. They're not going to fly me 6,000 miles just so I can laugh again. Now, the guy who became a voiceover artist because of the work that he did voicing Salacious Crumb got the job because he was working at ILM as a carpenter. And when the editor who was editing the scene that Salacious was in came out of his room, somebody told Mark a joke, and Mark heard the joke, and he went, and the editor said, excuse me, young man, could you step in this room for a minute with me?
That's amazing.
Mark might argue with that because he wants to say he was a professional voiceover artist his whole life, but just like Harrison Ford, he started off as a carpenter at ILM, not as an actor or a voice artist. But anyway.
Now, speaking of Harrison Ford, I did read an incredible story about him and Salacious
If you go
Crumb.
to admiralackbar.co.uk, you can read that whole story. It is a long story.
It's an incredible story.
What I love about that, the young AD that came under the set to tell me I was fired, I noticed that he was now one of the producers on Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
So he's obviously grown in the world from when he was just being sent around to do dog's body work and fire people off the set. So,
Tom, do you know
yeah, it
this
was
story?
Chris Newman. Yeah.
Tom, do you know this story at all?
No.
Tim, are you able to fill him in? Even if it's just a quick version, because it's a fantastic story.
You can't tell it quick because it only works. Harrison is a great guy. On this particular day, the pressure was on because the whole thing for the movie was Han Solo in this movie or wasn't he? Did he get unfrozen out of the carbon or didn't he? I think it had much to do with, was Harrison going to work for the money they were offering him, or did we have to write him out of the script? But I won't go there. So anyway, he has to be stuck in this carbon cast and then his whole face all slathered up and all that so he can come sliding out of this carbon mold. Well, it wasn't a fun thing to do. So that put him in a bad mood in the first place. It was taken forever to get the lighting done on the shot. And the lighting guy wouldn't let us prop up our characters. We all had to be in our characters, holding them up, wearing them, whatever we were doing. And it took hours before we even turned over for the first time. So we were all frustrated with the thing. Now, the director never talked much to me as Tim, but he used to love talking to Salacious. And Salacious used to bust his chops because I work off a monitor, so I can see how they're lining up the shot and all that. So, he'd be working away and he'd come over and he'd sit next to Salacious and say, so Salacious, how was that? And I said, are you going to turn over on this shot? You can see a light in the top for the first thing, can't you see that? Because I can, Anyway, so he liked talking to Salacious while he was waiting for things to happen. So we do the first take of Harrison sliding out of the carbon. And we were told that he slides out, Princess Leia runs in, plants a big kiss on him, and the curtains open, and we all go, "We saw you kissing, we saw you kissing," and making loads of noise. So we did the first take. Harrison goes to the director, and he says, all these puppet characters, are they going to make all that noise while I'm doing my dialogue? Because I don't want to have to do ADR to over voice myself, you know. And the director said, "Quite right." And he came over and he said, "Okay, you guys, loved what you did, but second time, do the exact same thing, but do it in mime. Don't make a sound." So we do take 2. Harrison slides out. Carrie comes in and kisses him. Curtains open, and we all. But then the director wanted take 3. So he comes over and he sits down next to Salacious. And I think I'm just talking to the director between the two of us. But what I didn't realize was the sound guy saw we had lots of time to kill too. So he went off to get a cup of tea. And he left the sound up on my microphone in case I needed to say something important. Well, I didn't need to say anything important. And the director asked me what I thought of that last shot. Salacious looked up at him and said, "Yeah, the take was all right, but this Harrison geezer, is he going to laugh? Is he going to talk during our laugh? Because it's really putting me off." And it went booming over the floor.
Oh,
The
no.
crew, like you, thought it was very funny and laughed. Harrison didn't find it funny at all and left the set and said he wasn't coming back on until the bleepity bleep had said that was fired off the production. So the producer from Game of Thrones, who was just a young kid then, comes crawling underneath because I'm under the set with my arm stuck through there with a puppet on my hand, comes crawling through all the muck under the set and says, "Tim, I got some bad news, man. Harrison's really upset with what you said, and he's not going to come back to work until you're fired off the production." "Can I go apologize, man? I was just making a joke between me and Rich. I didn't realize he was going to." No, you really upset him, you know. "I know." "Well, okay, but if I'm fired and we're still filming, then who's doing the puppet?" And he looks around and he says, "Well, you are, but if anybody asks you, you got to tell them you're the new guy." And on the call sheets from there forward, it was said, "Salacious Crumb, the new guy."
Amazing. That is amazing.
Because nobody ever knows who does the puppets anyway, you know. So,
I love that story so
That
much.
is
I was roaring
so
when I read
good.
that.
well, you see, that's where the British film technicians, you know, the guys, Richard Tomlin and all these guys, they were genius at dealing with actors, or dealing with all the problems of getting the juggernaut, which is a film production in full flow, moving in the right direction, you know, while massaging all the egos and doing all that sort. You know, it's they're unsung heroes. They do an amazing job at what they do. So
That is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, obviously with all the pandemic and stuff going on, have you missed conventions? Have you been going back to any recently, or are you still waiting?
I did that Howard the Duck one online the other day. That was good fun.
Oh, amazing. But I mean, like physically going, like, do you actually miss physically going to meeting people and meeting the fans and stuff?
Well, I read a biography of Neil Armstrong, who became very famous after he went to the moon.
Yeah.
And he said in his biography the same thing I said, was that, you know, that Star Trek thing where they go blip, 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 and say, "Beam me up." He said, "I wish they'd hurry up and invent that." Because I love talking to the fans, as you can tell.
Yeah.
I love telling all the old war stories, but the airplanes, the flying. Yeah, I had a friend who described it as, "Why don't you just go in a closet and shut the door and stay there for 8 hours?" You know, it's horrible. Is it going to take off on time? Is it going to land in the airport it's supposed to? Is there going to be anybody there to take me to the hotel? It's the wrong time zone. All I want to do is sleep, and I have to go be friendly for 8 hours now. You know, it's that side of it is totally unenjoyable.
Yeah.
But I love meeting the people like you who said, "You know what you did? It really made a difference in my life." Because
It's true.
I hit my midlife crisis. You know, it's like, why didn't I listen to my mom? She wanted me to become an architect. I'd done some stuff. I did win one architectural competition thing when I was a kid, but so why didn't I just listen to her and become an architect? And it was when I went to the conventions and found that, okay, so I haven't earned as much money as I would have if I'd been an architect, but my God, have I helped touch a lot of people's lives? That's got to be worth something all on its own, doesn't it? So it's
Absolutely.
like, okay, I'll be happy with that. I'm satisfied.
It almost makes you like the richest man in the world, just from for the way you've affected people.
Who doesn't have a pension? Oh well. And CG is taking over my day job. Oh well.
Bastards.
But you gotta laugh. I told you I wasn't going bitter and twisted on this interview. So
You did. Yeah.
Conventions, how many times do you reckon you've had "It's a Trap" shouted at you?
They love that one. I'm really glad they picked up on "It's a Trap" because they all want me to write it when I sign my name on the picture. And if they had wanted, we cannot withstand firepower of that magnitude instead, I'd still be there writing, So it's,
So,
I thought when The Force Awakens, I had a really lovely scene with John Boyega. And in it, I say, "Follow me." And I thought, oh, I'm going to have a new catchphrase I can say in the new movie. But JJ cut it out of the movie. So I'm stuck with "It's a Trap" forevermore. I'm not stuck with it. I'm happy with it. If it makes people happy, it's easy for me to do. So I don't mind doing it at all.
I was literally just about to mention Force Awakens. You kind of gave me a segue there. That was great. Thank you.
Hey, we're working right together. We got a good thing going here, Matt. Yeah. You and me, we're a team. Yeah.
But how did you find out about Force Awakens and coming back to the role? How was that call? Getting that call asking to come back?
Yes, well, I auditioned against thousands of people, and I was just so damn good. No, I'm afraid I can't say that. I have BB-8 to thank for that.
Huh?
Okay.
Well, Brian Herring, who performed BB-8 on The Force Awakens, he was also in charge of getting all of the puppeteers and bodysuit artists to do all the other characters. And at the time, I was at a convention in Australia, because that's what I do now. I'd love to design more animatronics, but nobody needs them because they were doing it with CG. So I'm at this convention in Australia, and I get an email from Brian. And he said, "Tim, I really need to talk to you, but you have to open this attachment and sign it and send it back to me." Well, I had no way of printing the attachment to sign it and do anything. And it was a non-disclosure agreement. So Brian couldn't talk to me. But I was at this convention and all the kids were saying, "Oh, there's going to be a new movie. Is Ackbar going to be in it?" And I just laughed and said, if they're going to have Admiral Ackbar in the next movie, they're going to have somebody in him who is my age when I did Ackbar, which was 24. They're not going to have some old fart like me doing it. And then I finally found out why Brian wanted to talk to me, and that's because he was back there lobbying that if they wanted Ackbar in the movie, they should have Tim Rose play Ackbar. Because we'd worked together on Spitting Image, so he knew that if you want the puppet, you need the puppeteer. You can't just put anybody in a puppet and expect it to be the same character, So when I found out what they wanted, I was very excited about it. But on the other side, I went, oh my God. And I said yes to the part. And the first thing I did was run up to the workshop and blow up the tires on my bicycle and start doing serious mileage, because doing full body suit characters can kill you. If you're not in good enough shape, they can kill you.
That'd be a bad way to go, wouldn't it?
Well, I came the closest. They came the closest to killing me on. The brain's gone again. The best Star Wars movie of all time, Rogue One. There we go. I was playing the Sholan character in Rogue One. And my friend Aiden, who's the same age as me, so we're both now 60 or 61 years old. He was in the other Calamari with Paul Casey was the boss up there. But the two of us were his assistants in this scene. And we were shooting a death scene where the Death Star comes in over the top of us and all the lights go dim because it blocks off the sunlight and everything. And we all look at each other and go, been nice to know you, but you know. And then we do this thing that was like straight out of Star Trek, you know, tilt camera left, all fall right, tilt camera right, all fall left, like that. And then they shout explosion, and at the explosion they shake the camera, and this big explosion was supposed to happen, which was going to be put in after the shot. I could see out of the corner of my nostril, because that's all you can see out of in one of these characters, that when they shouted explosion, Aiden had thrown himself clear out of his chair and landed on his back on the stage floor, you know, and went, God damn it, he's not going to die better than me. So on the next take, when they shouted explosion, I threw myself clear across the room and landed with my back across Rhodes's console, the big arm on his seat, and then just sort of slid down towards the console with my back broken. But I had done so much action physically that my heart was now going at about 140 beats a minute, and I could not pull any air into this costume. And I ran over to the AD and I said, need dresser now, air, need air. And this young jerk, 23 years old, whatever, looks at me and goes, go sit down, we haven't finished filming yet.
Oh, no.
I said, I'm not going to die in this costume. Which I could have if they hadn't bothered to put some air in there and let me breathe. There's a scrim. As I said, at one of the conventions, the things we voluntarily put up with in the costumes are very similar to the torture techniques of Guantanamo Bay. Because this costume was in the process of waterboarding me, because when you're sweating in the costume, your body goes up to 103, 104 degrees, your heart rate goes up, but the sweat completely covers the inside of the costume. And the scrim, which is all I can get air through, and that's only when the mouth is open, was covered in sweat. So it's kind of like a towel with water being poured over it. And I just couldn't get any fresh air through the mouth of this character, you know. So yeah, I got scared then.
I'm really not surprised. Bloody hell.
And we'd been in costume for 6 hours solidly.
Oh, yeah, no. So,
but I'm sorry, I don't want the mouse to take my house, so I shall not continue on with the conversation.
Well, in The Last Jedi, obviously, Ackbar met his end, which was very sad. Now, a lot of fans were pissed about the way Ackbar went out. I remember a lot of people being angry.
And you didn't even see it.
What were your thoughts?
We filmed it. And even in the days of CG, we finished our dialogue part and our positions, and they replaced us in set with 3 stunt guys with snatch lines on them who took our positions, and then they physically blew up the set. We all had to watch from out in the alleyway because we weren't allowed in the studio because what they were doing was so dangerous. They were getting 6,000 pounds each for one take.
Whoa!
Wow.
It was so dangerous. And basically, the explosion blew them all clear across to where Carrie had been standing. And then the snatch line snatched them out through the broken window as the vacuum of space pulled them out and took them clear to the top of the studio. Now, we filmed it. It wasn't in the movie. I'm going to lose my house because I even told you about this because I've signed an NDA. But the only thing I can think of is when they saw what they'd done, they thought, actually, he was one of the good guys and the fans sort of like him, and maybe we've made the biggest mistake of our lives. I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. But even my death scene, you didn't get to see. So kill me, but at least show you killing me, you know?
Yeah. Do me some justice.
Yeah.
I think that's why fans are so pissed. They're like, we love this character. He was there, and he's gone. Where the fuck did he go?
I realized somewhere during all this process that Jim Henson was dead. We had, in these new movies, we had some of the best animatronics characters that animatronics people had ever made.
Mm.
And half of them don't make it through the edit. They're just not in the movie. And I realized that although we have the animatronics, what we didn't have was anybody who remembered how to film animatronics. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it, but yeah. I mean, with the original Ackbar, I rehearsed the heck out of them. With any puppet character, they have limitations. They have things they do well and a lot of things that look really badly. The original Ackbar just had foam latex hands with bits of armature wire in it. So you had to be really careful because the hands would start just fluttering around and it would kill him. He would look like a foam latex puppet instead of like a real live thing. So when you see the original Ackbar, he always has his hands fixed on something. We were double-sided tape onto the console or onto the railing he was talking to. Or the thing people love about the big, strong Ackbar with his hands on his hips, I developed that because I was trying to hide his fingers, not because I thought it looked good. With him being such a strong character, you know, with his hands on his hips. So this guy who got into the film business because he'd seen Return to Oz as a kid, and that made him want to do movies for a living. He was a Spanish kid that was working with us on this Force Awakens. I went and said, I always hated Ackbar's fingers. Could you make a set of moving finger extensions for me? And he made them for me. He didn't tell the boss that he'd done it because they weren't going to pay for it, you know, sort of thing. So he did it out of the kindness of his heart after hours. And when I got these finger extensions, they worked so well. I was trying to get his hands into every shot. He started playing with his waddles and all. My fingers move, my fingers move. You know, it just, I was having such fun with this character because he now was, I didn't have to hide his hands anymore. You know, he was fully alive.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hi, John Boyega.
See my fingers move. Yeah. So I love that. That kid, you know, he told me that he got into the business because of Return to Oz.
Amazing.
And he had helped me build this character. It was a BBC thing, Wizards versus Aliens, you know, just here today, gone tomorrow, whatever. But he had helped me so much on that to thank him, I went up in the loft and I dug around, must have something. And I found a badge off of TikTok's chest. And it was a Royal Army Oz badge, which was an original prop from TikTok, you know. And it was mounted on a little plaque. So I wrote on the back of it, for service above and beyond the call of duty, you are now a member of the Royal Army of Oz.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that would have made me cry. No doubt about it.
Well, it's making me cry talking about it. No, so I gave it to this kid. And he burst into tears in the middle of the workshop. And I said, man up, because I ain't going to hug you, okay? But, you know, it was just sitting in my loft and it made him cry. So I did a good thing. So there you go.
That is beautiful.
Just before we get out of it, I just want to ask one quick, because obviously we spoke a lot about my favourite stuff you've done. Are there any projects that we've not spoke about that stand out to you, that especially special to you in your career?
Especially special.
All right. Mock me.
Well, they're all, when you're doing it, you're always trying to do the best you can every time you're doing it. There's no other choice. So with the most special, the one that I just mentioned, the Wizard versus Alien, they originally came to Millennium and they said, we want you to make this a Jabba the Hutt character. And I said, well, we can't do that. He belongs to somebody else. But what they meant was a big over-the-top character like that. So we built him this alien who was meant to be so gluttonous that he'd eaten his way into his spaceship and he was now so fat he couldn't get out of the spaceship. But what that really meant was his head and shoulders filled that entire section of the spaceship. So we didn't have to make his whole body as well because the budget didn't cover it. But so I made him what I thought was a fairly decent animatronic head. And what they didn't know was that my bosses back in Millennium were so angry that I had spent so much time and gone so far over the budget making this thing. They didn't tell me what the budget was, so I couldn't keep it within something I didn't know. So I just built what I wanted to build. And I was also, I did audition this time against all the other puppeteers, and I got the job to puppeteer it. And so I designed it, built it, and now I was going to get to puppeteer it. And I was really excited about that because this was going to be the first time in my entire 40-year career when people were going to hear my voice. I know it's a silly thing, but it's just something that
no, not at all.
Before I die, I'd like to do one character where I'm allowed to do his voice. Come on, guys. I know I got a weird voice, but it's not that weird. Come on, somebody will like it. They liked it on TikTok. Come on, somebody likes it, Anyway, so I've now built this thing. They were so angry with me that when the truck came to take it down to Cardiff, the boss came over and said, "Get it in the truck." And I said, well, it's 12 foot tall and 15 foot wide and has this entire scaffold rig behind it and all that. I think I'm going to need some help here. Yeah, okay, we'll take them and them and them, but get it in the truck. I mean, they were really pissed off with me. So we got it out, and overnight we set it all up. Then they did a screen test. And I said, so this puppet character, do I have a microphone? Yeah, you got a microphone, got a little speaker out here, but it's just to see how you match up with the two prosthetic characters. It doesn't really matter what you say. I said, oh, so I can say whatever I want to. Okay, yeah. So they said turn over, and I did the old Muppets razzle dazzle.
Yeah.
And I just had fun. I had a monitor, I had my character that I built myself, and I was going to see what it could do. And I just brought it alive and started doing things. And the buzz that went through this, these were all film technicians, working on this TV show. But I realized very few of them had ever been in the room with a live animatronic character. This was now the days when CG was taking over the movies. But when I brought this thing alive, they all became kids again.
That's amazing.
That's incredible.
And not only did I do my little 2-minute screen test, but I had to do it again and again and again. And then, what's that guy? The one that responsible for all the Doctor Who's and the...
Oh, Stephen Moffat? No?
No, before him, his
Before
boss.
I can't think what his name is.
The one who just did the Flip.
I have no idea. I can't
The gay guys from the 70s TV show.
No, lost me on that one.
I have no idea, unfortunately. I'm so sorry to.
Oh, well, he's the most famous one of them all. Anyway, he comes down to
That guy.
see what's in this room, what's being performed and all that. And it was great fun to know that I still had it. So we start shooting the show. And then I get asked to go to the producer's office. And the producers say, "Tim, you've done such a fabulous job with this character that we want to take it the whole way and get in a named character to overvoice it.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
And they brought in Brian Blessed, who I was doing a character that was so scary you had to be behind the sofa just to watch this guy. And then it got turned into the Brian Blessed Show. You know. And I had to listen to his voice all day long and mouth sync to his dialogue, which had all been shot outside the studio. So it was no longer even matching up with what the performers on set. You know, we were starting this whole, and then Brian's voice would come into the middle of it, totally wrong for what was being set up dramatically. But anyway, they wanted to take it the whole way.
Oh.
I'm so sorry, Tim.
Oh, well. You've heard my voice, so.
It's glorious. I've been thoroughly enjoying it.
Have to be happy with it.
Are you working on anything at the moment that you're allowed to talk about?
I've just bought a little sailboat out in Gloucester, and I'm trying to get my friend who's got a tow hitch to help me go out there and pick it up and bring it back here. And I'm not doing anything that would surprise anybody. There hasn't been a whole lot going on. They've done a bit of spinning image again, but I wasn't really. It wasn't my favorite thing because I'm into the movement, and they were more into the voices and the caricature, and the puppets themselves were not that wonderful. I was actually, nobody knows. There was these two guys, Peter Fluck and Roger Law, and they did sculpts for magazines where everybody else was doing artistic drawings. These two guys were actually sculpting three-dimensional things and then photographing them for the stills pictures for the magazines. Now they came up with this idea that they wanted to do a TV show. They hired me to come up to Cambridge every day and work with them in the workshop to teach them how to make a puppet. I'm now teaching somebody else how to make a puppet. Hey, isn't that a good idea? So we built all the stuff for the spinning image pilot. And then the producer called me up and said, Tim, we'd like you to, we've got no money. Every pilot that's ever been made, they always start off with the line, we've got no money. But we'd like you to come in and puppeteer. And if the pilot becomes a TV show, then we'll offer you a job on the TV show. And I just said, oh, yeah, because I'd been around the business long enough to know that when you help out on a pilot, as soon as they get the money, they go, well, we don't want him because he works for free. And they go get somebody else who they think is better just because they demand money, you know. But I thought, actually, I'm not doing anything that day. I'll take the chance. Maybe the one people in the business who aren't lying, you know. And then he calls me back and he said, we need you to bring your toolbox along. I said, okay, that'll be 200 pounds for the day. And he said, oh no, we've got no money to pay you. And I said, well, I puppeteer because I love it. I fix them because I get paid to. And I thought, I'm doing two jobs for these guys. The cameraman's going to get paid. The lighting guy's going to get paid. None of the puppeteers are going to get paid, but, you know, I'm doing two jobs at once. And they refused to pay me to fix them as well as perform them. And being an American, I thought, political puppets, it's never going to fly. Well, it did fly for 14 seasons. And the other people who puppeteered and worked for free, they did hire on the production, and they all paid off their mortgages off the money that they made on spinning image. I finally got hired on the spinning image in the last 4 seasons, which was where I met Brian Herring, which was where he then gave me the job as Ackbar with it. You know, it all just runs around. We're very incestuous, our business. So I finally did puppeteer on spinning image, but only for the last 4 seasons.
Oh, Tim.
I call it my biggest financial mistake or misjudgment of my career to not work for free.
Yeah, but you've done it so many times, and then you got screwed over. So obviously you're gonna be like, well, no, because it's just gonna happen again, and it's the one time it doesn't actually happen.
It was the one and only time when it didn't happen.
That is such a shame. Bless you, fella.
Tom, have you got any more questions before we wrap this up?
No, I just think this has been the most glorious conversation we've had. So, Tim, thank you so much, man. But I've really, really enjoyed it.
I know a story I can tell you if you got time for one more story.
Go for it.
Return to Oz.
Oh, I'm definitely interested.
It was a Disney production. George Lucas and Disney. And Walter Murch had spent 10 years writing the scripts for Return to Oz. And he was always resentful. I mean, as big a film as Wizard of Oz was, they effectively stole Frank Baum's book and made it into their movie, kind of like Howard the Duck. They stole the duck and then just made it into their own movie.
Hmm.
So Willard's whole thing was that if Frank had been alive, because Frank Baum was Victorian times, he was before movies. If he had still been alive, how would he have made a movie of his own book? So he wrote this script, and the original script for the movie we were going to make was a very dark thing indeed. It was Grimm's fairy tale, not a I'm happy I'm over the hills, I'm over the hill, like that.
Yeah.
But halfway through pre-production, Disney got cold feet, and they halved his film budget. So we were meant to be taking all these characters out to all these real locations that the art department had found. And I mean, I saw some of these photographs in the art department. I said, who built that set? And they went, oh, no, that's not a set. That's a place we're going to film in northern Italy. Well, you're kidding. That exists in the world. I mean, it was. They'd found Oz here on Earth. It was just amazing. But we couldn't go there now because we didn't have the money to go there. So with weeks left yet again, they're madly building sets up on the back lot, and we're building other sets in the studio and trying to do this. And Walter had to chop his script in half, and what I thought some of the best concepts in the movie had to go to the cutting room floor, had to be lost because we didn't have the money to film them. So anyway, with us madly scrambling, trying to now make a movie for half the budget, we got behind schedule with filming. Can't possibly imagine why, but we got behind schedule with filming. And they said, the only way we're going to allow you to continue being the director on this film, the director on the film that you wrote the script for and have spent 10 years of your life trying to bring to life, is if you can find a co-director that will approve. And they knew that whoever he said, they'd shoot him down, bring in Chris Columbus and get this thing done and in the can. What they didn't realize was who Walter had gone to university with. And the first person he called up was George Lucas. And he said, George, I really need your help. Can you come co-direct with me? Because they're going to take my movie away from me unless I can find somebody that they'll approve. And George said, well, I'd love to help you, but I just can't, I don't have that much time to give. But I tell you what, I'll come over and have a look and see how things are and see if there's anything I can do, but I can't co-direct. He said, well, that's really kind of you, but I still need a co-director. So the second person he called up was Steven Spielberg, who he'd also gone to university with. And Steven said, well, I'm doing this Raiders thing. It's like we're in pre-production. We got all the scripts going and everything. I just don't have the time. I tell you what, I'll come over and I'll have a look at things and see if there's anything I can do to help, but I can't co-direct. So the third person he asked to co-direct was Francis Ford Coppola, who he'd also gone to university with. And he was the same thing. It's like, yeah, well, we got this little thing, the Godfather, and I'm trying to work out the music, but I can't direct the whole thing. So we ended up, while we were shooting the scene of the Gump sofa being put together, with George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and Francis Ford Coppola all sitting on the side of set in director's chairs, watching Walter work.
That is incredible.
Walter had worked with all of these guys on different productions. He'd done Apocalypse Now. He was a sound editor as his day job, so he'd worked with them all at one time or another, but they hadn't, all four of them, been back together since university. And to watch them, they were kids again. They were all sitting out there going, "Hey, George, maybe Disney's right after all. Are you really going to turn over on this shot?" They spent the whole week busting his chops. And at the end of the week, 110 Disney producers or whatever, however many, come flying into the studio. And they all walk off and have this meeting. And as we understood it, the basic sum up of what was said in this meeting was, well, we've watched this guy work for a week and we think he's a pretty damn good director. And what all we can see is wrong with this thing is he doesn't have any producers supporting him. Isn't that what the producers are supposed to do? And at that point, they backed off. But by the time they backed off, they'd already done so much damage that a film that could have been just as big as the original ended up a film that was good, you can enjoy, but was a flawed piece.
It's a shame. But
so I'll definitely get sued for that one. I'll lose the house for it.
I'll be happy.
But that was before a non-disclosure agreement. So I'd like to actually argue that point with them when they come to take my house away. I said, that's the truth, and that's happened before you had me signing NDAs. So,
Tim, before we let you go, have you got any plugs, social medias, anything you want people to check out, any websites, etc.?
Well, my website at admiralackbar.co.uk. But you made me tell the story that's on it now. So the thing I really like about it, I think I wanted it called My Collection, but for some reason my web designer guy didn't get that right. It's just called Collection or something. But over the years during conventions, I've been given things from the fans. I mean, the fans are so generous. And I have a very small house, so I couldn't display it. So what I finally ended up doing was I took pictures of all the things that I've been given over the years, and I put them in my website as my Star Wars collection. That's what it was supposed to be called.
Yeah.
But I've been given some pretty cool stuff over the years. So
that's amazing.
Worth checking out.
I think
I have
I
have a Yoda, my favorite thing in my collection. It's my Yoda baseball cap. They did this little green baseball cap with Yoda on it, and then Yoda ears sticking out of it. And when I did Labyrinth, I came walking on set with my hat on and walked straight over to Frank.
Amazing.
To make fun of him.
Yeah.
Hey Frank, I hear you did a little puppet on this little movie, ha ha ha. Anyway, I took it off and I said, Frank, I don't normally ask this sort of thing, but could you sign my Yoda cap for me? And Frank signed my Yoda cap for me.
That's so cool. That's
awesome.
So cool.
I was really, really happy that he'd done that. So.
Lovely. Tim, I mean, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time out to sit and chat to us today. We really appreciate it. And obviously that we got to find a daytime to do it rather than an evening.
Well, exactly. You see, if you'd started me in the evening, I'd be sound asleep by now.
Yeah. We would have bored you that much.
And I've only managed to tell you about 1/20th of the stories. So, yeah.
I can imagine.
We're going to have to go for round 2 sometime soon, aren't we?
Round two. Ding.
Yeah.
No, Tim, this
We
means
gotta
it
go
absolutely
until this man doesn't have a house to live in. Ding. Okay.
Part 2, the mouse took his house. And
Yeah.
but Tim, this means a lot, and it was honestly means the absolute world to me. Like I said earlier on, the stuff you've done in your career is just it's made my life. It really has. You know, just so many amazing projects that mean the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for doing this.
No,
So-
thank you.
Been a
Thank
pleasure,
you for
sir.
enjoying.
Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
And you.
Remember, it's a trap.
Oh, amazing.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Perfect. Thank you so much, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Take care, sir.